Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. Today we are going to speak about enterprise IT and how we transform it into an innovation and profit center. So let me start with introductions. My name is Alessia. I'm working with strategic enterprise customers and managing enterprise portfolio at DataArt. Today I have two great experts with me. So please meet Kit Angell. Kit has served as a board director, CEO, and C-level executive for 12 technology companies. Right now, through his firm Westshore Partners, he provides investment, advisory, and board services in the IT SaaS software and services space. And also, Kit helps enterprises optimize and execute value creation plans. So our second expert is Raama, Dev. Raama is my colleague. Raama is leading innovation and transformation in healthcare at DataArt. So before we start our conversation, let's start with some technical details. At the end of our session, we will have a Q&A session where we will be answering all the questions from the chart. So I motivate you not to be shy and put all your questions into the comment section at LinkedIn, and we will make sure we address all of them at the end of our presentation. So let's start. I think we are ready. And my first question would be to you, Kis. Why do you think this topic is relevant? What trends do you see on the market? Can you share your vision?
Yeah, it's thanks, Alessia, and welcome everybody. It's a great honor to be here. Thank you. You know, this topic certainly very relevant. It's never been a more interesting time to be a corporate or IT leader than today. Technology has never been more important or critical. So let's talk about why that's relevant and what trends we're seeing. First, we know there's lots of ways to measure corporate performance, but perhaps none is more meaningful than whether you're still alive. And as this chart shows, corporate longevity is on the decline, and it's actually at an all-time low. The latest analysis by Standard & Poor's shows that the 30 to 35 year average from the late 70s of the lifetime of a S&P 500 company has shrunk to half of that, 15 to 20 years. So the average time to death for an S&P 500 enterprise is only 15 or 20 years. And I saw an article this morning that highlighted that more CEOs of the Global 3000 have been fired this year than any year on record. So clearly the pressure to live is really high. And second, we know that 5 of the top 10 most valuable companies in the world are relatively young tech giants, founded in the last 20 years. New companies, many of which are digitally based, have changed the way that business is conducted across all industries, capturing huge market share in lots of industries and disrupting the old way of doing business. So platform-based, digitally native companies now dominate in the list of the top S&P firms. It just illustrates how technological disruption and innovative business models can drive big increases in corporate valuations. Leaders who want their companies to survive must adapt.
Thank you, Kit. And it looks like if you want to live long life, you have to change, right? So all respect to evolution. So Raama, my second question is for you, but how it's connected to innovation?
Hello, everyone, and welcome as well to our webinar today. Yeah, I'll take that one. So corporate longevity is directly connected to digital excellence. So we see that there are two denominators, common denominators for great companies that make great companies. Number one is great leadership teams, and number two is great use of technology, right? So because corporate longevity is so directly connected to digital excellence, in turn, digital excellence is driving innovation and transformation. So what Keith has just described, right? Successful business models of today are primarily technology-based or technology-enabled. And technology has increasingly become the driver for value creation, value delivery, and most importantly, protection. So technology creates competitive advantage that was unimaginable only a few years ago. So building that advantage in their markets is what DataArt helps our clients with, right? It's also of interest that there was a recent study by McKinsey that digital and AI leaders, they all outperform their peers by 2-3 times in financial returns. They also maintain that competitive advantage over time. So that's the reason that corporate longevity is so tightly connected to digital excellence.
Yeah, and I can support what you are saying, Raama, because I'm managing enterprise portfolio in DataArt. I also see that companies who are focusing on long-term innovation strategy are much more adaptive to market volatility, market changes, and they win even tactically. So maybe it's mindset, I don't know. But let's get back to our agenda and let's speak about 3 stages, and that absolutely necessary to perform a transformation and make it a success. So today we are going to speak about strategizing, planning, and execution. Let's try to unpack the first topic, which is strategizing and focusing on business outcome. Keith, my question is for you. What is the obstacles on this path and how you can be, how they can be addressed? What's your vision on that? What's your opinion?
Yeah, it's interesting that the obstacles really come from the historical dilemma of IT. And as we think about transformation, turning IT into an innovation and profit, that IT historically has been split between these two pieces. When you have a transformation objective, on the top you see kind of the 90% of budgets is spent on running, keeping the lights on, and just a constant reduction. Whereas the transformation is often new projects, innovate, merger and acquisitions, make the business more competitive. And it's always been a dilemma of keep everything going, but also transform. And that's the old way of thinking about it. So as we think about strategy, the goals have to change. And in fact, IT has to change. The old dilemma of splitting run from grow or run from innovate is it's impossible to do. So we have to reshape IT.
Yeah, I fully support what you're saying, Keith. So what we see in practice is that the seemingly divergent goals that Keith has just described, they find a single answer in a new IT paradigm that is increasingly becoming common. So in that paradigm, IT is fully integrated into business strategy, right? Planning and operations as well. And the way it is integrated as a value-based portfolio of initiatives that have related KPIs that link those to business outcomes. So let me give you an example of those KPIs. It can be revenue from new products, can be average time to market, it can be net promoter score, it can be customer churn rate. These are the KPIs that IT traditional and historically didn't have, right? So as an illustration, another illustration how IT business model is changing, so to say, is Foundry's 2024 State of the CIOs survey found that 88% of CIOs say that their role is increasingly becoming more digital and innovation focused. So 88% of CIOs. So Arisa talked about changing the mindset earlier. So it is indeed quite a change in the mindset for IT leaders to think differently and become oriented and motivated and compensated to achieve certain business outcomes, right? So that requires them to think like business strategists and focus on building specific business capabilities. So what we see in our practice is that our clients are creating dedicated IT units or subsidiaries that are directly and primarily focused on driving the business growth. So in some of the ways, as the slide shows, some of the ways that these units pursue those objectives are through platformization and rationalization, modernization of their portfolios, more aggressive adoption of emerging technologies, and we'll talk about it later today.
Thank you, Raama. This is actually very interesting, but can you describe this new paradigm in more details?
Yeah, let me take that. I love this slide of the paradigm shift in IT spending to value-based portfolio aligned with business outcomes. This is something that I think we all have to take into account as we set the strategy for turning IT into a profit center, right? We've talked about IT in the past and the new paradigm. So the old offense defense framework it's not as relevant because it has to be fit into this broader context of aligning IT spending, all of R&D, software development, all of the work that we do in technology in a corporation with value-based business-driven strategies. So IT in the past was a cost center, whereas in the new paradigm, it's a profit center. It's what drives profit. Instead of serving the business strategy, you're now driving business strategy. And the balance between keep the light on, the run, grow, transform paradigm shifts to aligning the funding of all technology spend with the value to the customers. How much value in supply chain or in customer relationship or in net promoter score, in any of these areas, aligning the funding of all of your technology with a business outcome. And so it requires this move to the new paradigm. It means taking IT from the past into this paradigm where it's an integral part of corporate strategy, fully aligned to business outcomes with funding oriented that way, and becomes a board level component for discussion and strategy for the entire corporation and where we're going in the future.
Thank you, Kit. It's speaking about this paradigm shift. What do you think? What are the key enterprise IT areas that may need this rewiring?
I'll take that one, and I apologize to the audience for wrong slide, wrong sequence. We're back at the right sequence. So, what's driving that rewiring is, or how to enable that rewiring, right? Is to make IT accountable for business outcomes. Essentially, the entire IT planning and execution flow, as shown on the slide, needs to be uplifted from strategy to governance to execution, and all the way down to scaling up, right? So we talked about value-focused KPIs that they need to be embedded at every step of IT operations. So on the strategy front, we mentioned KPIs like the revenue from new products, average time to market, NPS, etc. Maybe customer acquisition cost that is increasingly becoming one on the radar of IT executives. Customer churn rate. For business-aligned governance and execution, the part on the right, there are areas like governance model design. We'll talk about that later today. Digital product factory, creation of shared enterprise platform to host various digital offerings in a shared platform to achieve economy of scale and drive efficiency across the enterprise and reduce cost. As we move toward the scaling, adoption and capacity scaling and ROI-driven expansion, then there is a need to prioritize funding as you scaling requires additional funding as you move from pilots and MVPs to large-scale adoption. This is where CIOs and CDOs are increasingly leveraging approaches such as value-based portfolio management, agile investment models, weighted scoring models, and others, in order to properly allocate funding to those opportunities that have the highest ROI. So let me share an example from our recent work with a client. So we worked with a UK-based travel management company. to help with their digital transformation. So the goal was, as you can imagine, it's travel management company. So the heart of their business is a management platform, travel management platform, right? So the goal was to replace the very heart of their business. Essentially, it's quite a surgery, so to say, right? At the same time, they had to keep the operations going, keep the plane flying. So this was quite a successful program. Some of the outcomes is we helped and enabled an acquisition of a key competitor because of the capabilities the company mustered in the market. It was much easier in negotiation and M&A deal. The company significantly stepped up customer experience. They won several new key accounts in the market. They enabled achieving improved internal productivity. We created a product factory and reduced time, what they call from boardroom to production, right, to just a few days. So initially it was weeks and months. So it dropped to days, to few days from idea to execution. So some of the lessons learned why it worked is a couple of things come to mind as most important. Number one is a close alignment with business stakeholders during this transformation. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. We have a methodology how to facilitate that alignment. And number two is jointly having a joint artifact, so to say, to align stakeholders around the vision, progression, and funding of that transformation. We used a strategic transformation roadmap that earned trust across the board and enabled that very stakeholder alignment and engagement across the enterprise.
Thank you, Raama. This is an amazing story, especially a part about acquisition of key competitor. It always helps. But yeah. And you also mentioned the alignment, right, part, which is, I think, is the most important one, because when we are talking about strategizing, we can't avoid this, right? And this is the most important, from my opinion, topic, because we see in our everyday conversations with our enterprise customers that sometimes business and IT organizations have completely different goals. And we're also hearing from time to time that business would never buy something from IT which does not support their business goals. So it's always, a dilemma how to align their business goals. So can we also speak about how this new paradigm affects the planning stage? Because I think we are approaching the second stage of our transformation, which is planning, IT, innovation, and transformation. Can we unpack that topic now?
Yeah, let me take a shot. So as we move from strategizing into planning, let's start with a view of the evolution of IT advancement. So when we look at what's happened over the last 30 years, we know that digital excellence requires the leverage of all of the different phases of growth in technology over time. And if you can group those phases into this labor arbitrage phase, into a technology arbitrage phase, and a cognitive arbitrage phase. We've really been through the labor arbitrage phase with offshoring and nearshoring and tech augmentation and financial reengineering, DevOps. All those things have been implemented. So as you're going from a strategy into planning, you've already leveraged, most corporations have already leveraged the labor arbitrage. We're now in the middle of this technology arbitrage phase where process automation and AI and ML and Gen AI are being leveraged in our planning for how do we make improvements in CapEx and OpEx every year. And we're entering the next X curve of cognitive arbitrage. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But as you look at the planning efforts for your annual budget or 3-year plan, I was working this morning on a 3-year plan for a major corporation, and what's revenue and EBITDA and bookings growth and all that stuff, and the implementation of innovation and transformation alongside of that in this strategic alignment. The best firms continuously improve and implement these ever-changing best practices every year. We've seen this movie over and over again, right, for the last 30 years. So as we move into the current technology arbitrage arbitrage phase and into new cognition, we have to be able to adopt this in our planning. So Raama is going to talk about how do we do that.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning that DataArt, by very nature of our business and our business model, we're enjoying very much the gains and benefits of phase one, previous one, which is labor arbitrage. So I myself located onshore in US, Alessia is located in one of our remote locations. We support offshoring, nearshoring, onshoring. So we fully are leveraging that paradigm. And right now with the technology arbitrage phase, we're fully in as well, right? So let's talk a little bit about productivity gains. So as you can see on the chart, there are different levels, distinctly different levels of productivity that can be unlocked at each phase, right? What's worth noting is that those gains cannot be unlocked by pursuing individual technologies in isolation. You have to have a holistic transformation agenda, normally spanning a few years at least, right? As far as you can kind of see with a subsequently reduced level of visibility, granted, but you have to have a longer term perspective in order to gain those benefits as a part of a systematic digital excellence roadmap, right? So broadly speaking, we see productivity gains in the range of 30 to 60% in the current technology arbitrage phase, with continuous 5 to 15% year-over-year improvements, right? This is obviously significantly better, as you can see, than what was brought about by the labor arbitrage phase. And yet, it will likely be exceeded in the upcoming phase, in the cognitive arbitrage phase. Certainly, it's not all roses and no thorns. It's not like these gains are given, right? There are counteracting trends and challenges that can erode productivity or even increase the cost for enterprises. And it is happening every day, despite those technology advancements. So some of those counteracting trends are complexity of managing hybrid environments, skill shortages, reskilling cost, rising cybersecurity threats, overhead and costs associated with regulatory compliance, especially in the industries such as healthcare, financial services, change management challenges, overload coming from technology and fragmentation, diminishing return on automation. So lots of things that counteract those. This is exactly where it's beneficial and helpful to have a partner to jointly come up with a long-term perspective and counteract those diminishing returns with a smart transformation program.
Thank you, thank you, Raama. And Keith, can we talk about digital excellence, maybe?
Yeah, so moving into or leveraging the digital excellence, as Raama highlighted, we know that certainly it's leveraging the technology arbitrage and cognitive arbitrage, but what we also have to recognize is that we have to facilitate the emergence of a new distributed intelligence model. And let me just explain that. So we all work, remote. We're in a world where physical experiences converge with digital experiences, and they're aided by AI and automation, right? Each of us, often remote but connected parts of a larger technology muscle, right? So the ideation and the creation and delivery of value happens in a large-scale ecosystem. It's increasingly operating like a biological environment, people all over the world collaborating together. And so this new way of intersection, this increasingly distributed, intelligent IT model or technology model for most corporations is nonlinear. It's spontaneous. It's somewhat self-organizing and interactive. And so it's pretty complex, right? We have a complex adaptive and evolving system where we're applying AI and all the arbitrage and offshoring and nearshoring in the production of a aligned value-based model. That means the IT planning, the technology planning efforts for every corporation must accept and incorporate the new way of doing business into their planning exercise. So understanding the arbitrage of where we are in time and incorporating that in, facilitated by companies like DataArt. And then understanding that this new model, the distributed intelligent IT model, is part of the future. That's required in planning.
I'll add that indeed we see it kind of every day, right? Complexity of managing IT organization at the enterprise level is mind-boggling these days, right? So it has significantly changed. So let's just maybe walk through some of the key characteristics of that distributed intelligence IT model to kind of illustrate where that complexity is coming from. So on the left side, in terms of characteristics, I would highlight decentralized decision-making, right? It's distributed across teams and regions, enable to support faster response and localized innovation at the same time, right? So autonomous teams and agile practices, so cross-functional teams that operate independently. They leverage agile methodologies to deliver iterative improvements and rapid outcomes. That's a new concept as well. Then platform-centric architecture, that has been around for a while, but it's been incorporated into the system for additive synergistic effects. So where essentially you have centralized platforms that provide shared resources, tools, standards, enabling those decentralized teams to build and innovate at scale in a standardized way, right? In a kind of semi-controlled way with ensured quality, compliance, and required ROI. Data democratization, right? That's a big topic by itself. So open access to data and self-service analytics that empowers teams to derive insights and make informed decisions independently, right? Let's maybe take a look at the right side. So key components, some of the key components I would highlight, again, cloud and edge computing has been around for a while, but incorporated into distributed intelligence IT model, it has a new light, it shines in a new light now, right? It combines the scalability of cloud with real-time processing of edge computing for agile and efficient operations. API-driven integration, another one of the components that we observe in that model. APIs essentially ensure connectivity between systems, fostering interoperability and collaboration between teams and ecosystems. AI is a relatively new component to that. Automation has been, again, around for a while. But combined together, what happens is it's actually evolving right now into agentic AI, right? So this is where automation is kind of stretching all the way up to intelligent system. Automation tools allow to optimize processes and enhance decision-making and drive autonomous operations, right? That's a big new wave we just discussed in the technology arbitrage phase, the agentic AI that's increasingly taking shape now. Distributed data architecture related to data democratization, we talked about it. And last but not least, by far, zero trust security. So you have to have a comprehensive security framework that verifies every access to protect distributed environment. These are some of the characteristics and components that we see emerging in distributed intelligence IT model.
Thank you, Raama. And let me be a bit provocative, if I may. So what you're describing sounds like a very significant shift in mindset and organization culture. So right now, when we see that market is quite conservative to changes, the rhetoric we are hearing every day is about cost optimization, supporting just business as usual programs, fast fail criteria if we start something new. So everyone wants to be tactical rather than strategic. From the other hand, I agree that, and we mentioned that before, that companies which are not afraid to set ambition goals, they win the market, even tactically. For me, it's a bit of contradiction with long-term strategizing and putting, transformation program in place. But probably the key word here is balance. That's how I explain that for myself, right? But do you feel the same? How ambitious should companies be in their thinking? Is there any, I don't know, self-check to check that you're ambitious enough? What's your vision on that?
Yeah, it's another dilemma, I think, for executives.
Exactly. It's another dilemma.
So this balance of creating ambitious goals and leveraging, strategizing with business, focus on business outcomes, and leveraging technology and cognitive arbitrage, putting in place the key components that Raama highlighted in a planning exercise. So literally this morning was, as I mentioned, was counseling with a large firm, multi-billion-dollar firm, on their North Star vision. How do you backcast with a view towards the future, right? And how do you start with an end goal, future state? You have a current state. Where do I want to be? How do I leverage all the new paradigm, the new IT paradigm? But starting with an end goal in a planning exercise, whether it's a year or 3 years or 5 years, generally now it's kind of a 3-year view of bookings, revenue, EBITDA, initiatives, mergers and acquisitions, all those brought together. What are we going to do? How are we going to implement all these technologies in helping our customers meet all the KPIs that Raama covered earlier, right? So this backcasting notion from a North Star vision, who we are, what we want to be, aligning with our vision and mission, it allows us to confidently create an actionable plan, an integrated transformation roadmap with articulation of every component along the way. It should support the changes of how we operate. It allows us to meet the balance that you asked about, Alessia.
Probably makes sense. Go ahead, Alessia.
Yeah, Raama, go ahead. Sorry.
Makes sense to contrast it with what is the opposite of backcasting, right? The opposite of backcasting is traditional historical tool, which is called forecasting. You start where you are and you go one step forward, and then one step forward from there, and one step forward. That's called incremental improvements, right? And what we see is that incremental improvements are not enough. If you don't set that ambitious goal, which normally in the financial terms we would say should be your IT transformation program or whatever your digital program that you're contemplating, should bring about improvements of 20% or more to EBITDA, for example, right? That's kind of, Alessia, to your earlier point, how to benchmark that you're ambitious enough.
It's a great self-check. Thank you for that, Raama.
Yeah, if you don't have that, and you're maybe not even measuring the impact of your transformation in EBITDA terms, then maybe it's a good kind of reminder to see what are you doing? What is the impact of your program, right? Let's maybe quickly consider how does that backcasting work now that in the technology arbitrage phase, obviously it's all about AI. So if we think about AI, right, backcasting with AI acceleration, it's useful to consider what could be the end goal, right? So we discussed that. So in AI world, for example, it can be something as AI drives innovation, and it's fully integrated into the business model, and it enables continuous optimization and new revenue streams, right? So you start from there, and then you cascade it down. So whether you want to be, in between, how do you get there? What are the stepping stones, right? So the stepping stones are 3 years out. You want to have, AI center of excellence and governance model operational. AI is integrated at least into the core operations with a clear ROI from flagship use cases. 1 year out, you want to have foundational AI capabilities, prioritize use cases, early success stories to build the momentum. 6 months out, you want to build the data modernization. You want to accomplish data modernization and launch AI pilots and have the AI team in place. So these are some of the kind of practical aspects. Understood, it's high level, right? Certainly in real time, you will have much more sophisticated planning, but directionally, that's one of the ways to kind of benchmark if you're ambitious enough in your AI-enabled transformation.
Thank you, Raama. Another challenge, and I want to ask you another question. Talking to our customers, sometimes we see that there is no one transformation owner, right? So theoretically, in theory, it may be CIO or CIO office. However, there are organizations where we deal with like multiple stakeholders or even multiple CIOs. For example, if they have strong regional strategy and they have multiple CIOs responsible for a particular region. So usually many departments are involved and they all may have their own stakeholders, their own vision of transformation and their own budgets. And what we hear from our customers is it's important to be able to support all those, dialogue and help them to find a consensus. Because otherwise transformation would not be possible, right? We will not have that alignment we were talking about before. Sometimes they expect us to go even to another level, more abstract level, like have not just conversations, but conversations about conversations. So can you share your practical view, how we may help here, how it can be done? Because it sounds like one of the major challenges we are facing.
It does. And one of the ways to address that and the methodology we developed over the course of over 10 years and consistently refined that works exactly for that and a few other cases. We came up with what we call a Connect framework, right? So Connect framework is useful across a variety of types of initiatives. When applied to IT transformation, it helps to deliver a structured, systematic approach to plan out your IT and digital transformation, which is essential to have to achieve the success, right, of the comprehensive and complicated initiative. So what it helps to do is, we talked about North Star vision, okay, it's in place. Let's say it's low fidelity transformation roadmap resulting from it. And then you identify MVPs and pilots for key technologies that you span out early to further elaborate on those and dive deeper. And eventually you go to scaled agile implementation. This is what our framework supports, right? So you start by framing, okay, what are the goals? You proceed to solution design where you deep dive to validate objectives and lay the groundwork for what needs to be done. And during the elaboration, you further detail out specifications for your MVPs and case use cases along the transformation roadmap that was previously developed, and initiate those phase execution effort, and then you proceed to implementation. So in practice, what we see this methodology allows, it allows to significantly reduce the risk of transformation failure, establish that agile cadence of incremental and continuous review and improvement, and coordinate the execution effort focused on the goal. Because what otherwise often happens is that the moment you kind of kick the ball down the line, the project loses the goal, right? It can be less, the team can be less motivated to continuously align and check the progress against the business objectives, right? They kind of lose themselves in delivering technical improvements, no longer necessarily synchronized with where the business is going. So Connect framework allows us to continuously and meticulously align around the goal and deliver on the goal.
Thank you.
So maybe what would make sense is give an example.
Yeah, please do.
So we worked with a global financial services enterprise. It was fairly large-scale transformation of their global data intake and analytics systems for the core line of business. The three transformation pillars that we can talk about and identify as such in the program is compliance. How do you ensure secure data access and auditable services across the board during and post-transformation? Operational efficiency, as I mentioned, it's a fairly large scale, so we retired over 40 legacy systems and reduced support costs. And we developed new capabilities, so one-stop shop for data and analytics with full traceability of data. We received very positive feedback and reviews from the key stakeholders, as you can see on the slide, and we're fairly proud of that large-scale program.
Thank you, Raama. Another amazing story and good testimonials from our customers. We're always proud to have them. So I guess we were talking about strategizing and planning. I guess we all agree that strategizing with ambitious goals in mind and planning your changes, knowing what business outcomes you want to achieve at every milestones, are definitely two pillars that will lead to success, right? So let's try to unpack third topic, which is execution. Keith, from your perspective, what are the key components here? What do you think? Can you elaborate on that?
You're on mute.
You're on mute, Keith. Sorry, you have to unmute yourself.
Because I had to sneeze, apologies. We've talked about a strategy that focuses on business outcomes and how to plan IT, turning IT into a profit center in the new IT paradigm as part of this distributed intelligence model. So now let's look at how to execute. The most important part of execution, I think, is governance. Having a solid governance structure and a steering committee with executive sponsorship is required for ongoing success. That governance structure obviously will include clear roles and responsibilities, authority and approval levels, and executive leadership sponsorship, critical for success. This chart actually comes from an enterprise where I was involved in setting up the governance structure with detailed plans showing all of the elements on the right side of the chart, from business involvement to engineering support. So the governance, when you set up and you have a multi-year program to implement this new model of turning IT into a profit center, innovation and profit center, which does take time, you have to have the governance. And the governance team, that steering committee, will set up KPIs, proper measurement, all the budgeting and time constraints. That's really part of the governance and steering committee of a technology transformation team.
Okay, and thank you, Kit. And Raama, I think it was you who was mentioning that we may have 5 to 15% year-over-year cost efficiency increase as a result of the transformation. So I think it's a very attractive target, right? So how can we achieve that? What would be your practical advice?
That's a loaded question. You kept it to the end, right? So it's really, there is no simple answer, to be entirely honest. There are different ways to approach it, to how to solve it, but there is no silver bullet solution, obviously. One of the components, I can think of one particular component that probably kind of lays a foundation for continuous year-over-year improvements. We talked about planning. We talked about Connect framework that allows you to define what is it the right thing to build at the right time and at the right scope and at the right size with the right team. So as you progress with execution, there is a notion and the concept of product factories that comes to mind that is very helpful to achieve those improvements at scale, right? So cost efficiency at scale in a continuous recurring fashion, that's what product factory is designed to enable and unlock. So Keith just talked about governance. So it's tightly connected and very much based on that shared unified enterprise governance focused on IT transformation. What governance, the role that governance plays here, it supports and rationalizes the intake process for the product factory. So the product factory is on the right, and there are various factors that go into the product factory that enable it to churn out certain, digital deliverables. So as product factory works to intake the input factors to define what are those deliverables, it relies on that unified governance to structure that intake process properly, right? So overall, well, you can see what are the typical solution input factors. Obviously, this is very top level, high level, kind of bird's eye view perspective on product factory. There are way too many details to present, but I'll highlight a few aspects, right? So you process solution input factors that drive you towards innovation and transformation, but also you account for your existing legacy portfolio. On the legacy side, you want to prioritize investments into transforming your current systems based on, obviously the outcome, so and the risks and compliance. It's proverbial keep the plane flying type of problem while you replace maybe the engine on one of the wings. So you have to understand what is a user adoption kind of phase for each of these applications, prioritize ROI for modernization and replacement. All of that information goes into the intake process that provides the input for what we call the design ops. Design ops is that Connect framework we just talked about, solution design to elaboration and down to execution to the build ops, right? In the build ops, you have all those traditional steps, develop, implement, support. Again, this is very high level concept here, visualization. The key characteristics of the product factory is that scalable ramp up and ramp down of teams. It's moving the talent around the organization to focus on specific initiatives with specific targets for this year, for this quarter, and then moving them over to another project without losing the cadence, without losing the processes, without losing the speed. And some of the benefits that Product Factory unlocks is accelerated delivery and innovation. We talked about that. Phase transition for legacy modernization portfolio and coexistence with modern systems through that intake process and unified governance. Scalability and reusability of modular reusable components. And one of the most kind of remarkable is certainly cost efficiency to optimize resources and rationalize legacy transition. And through feedback loops and performance metrics, it allows for data-driven decision making. That's probably the most important things that come to mind about Product Factory.
Thank you, Raama. Thank you, Kit. I think it was tons of useful information today, and we touched multiple aspects how to transform enterprise IT into an innovation profit center. From my perspective, as a leader of enterprise segment at DataArt, the most important thing is support that all these frameworks support alignment between business and IT organization, making sure they have dialogue, they have the same goals, they're accountable for the same goals. So basically, they have the same target to reach, right? So it's always, of course, and cost optimization and that we were mentioning several times, providing different advices how to achieve that. So in DataArt, we saw very different and complex transformations, and we were part of them, and we gained like tons of practical experience how to fight all the challenges. And I can say that more than half of our revenue coming from cooperation with large enterprise customers. So we've seen a lot. And what's important that our customers basically trust us and they become our strategic partners and our key customers with us for more than 10 years. So I'm always proud to say that because I think it's a great achievement of our team. So I think we finished with the main part. Now let's transition to Q&A sessions. I see that we have several questions in our chart. Let me read them and we will try to address them. Okay, the first question is, how long does a typical IT transformation program usually take? Who wants to take that?
Yeah, let me try. In fact, I'm sure a number of the questions are going to be around how long does it take, how much does it cost, how does it fail, all these pieces, which really all related, I think, to execution, right? So if you buy into the notion that you should be strategizing with a focus on business outcomes and have value-based belief systems in your technology, your IT, your software development, your R&D, then it's really about execution. And the execution, as we talked about, planning and backcasting and the execution, the governance of that is really, I think, the most vital requirement, that you have to have a schedule, a scope, and a budget, as in any multi-year project, with sponsorship and communications and KPIs. So it's, how long, depending on the complexity of the organization and what your current state is, that'll dictate if you can do this in years or months, depending on where you start and what your North Star vision is. So the length of time is never a set thing. It really depends on where you're at and where you want to get to. But the mindset, which is so critical about being oriented around business outcomes and value-based thinking, is something you can do immediately.
Thank you, Kit. But we can't avoid this question. How much will this cost?
Yeah, I mean, Raama, you probably have a view as well. The reality is that it shouldn't cost anything. The reality is that the year-over-year advancements that Raama highlighted should be part of this conversion to the new IT paradigm. And so there shouldn't be an incremental cost. In fact, it should pay for itself. The evolvement of to this paradigm and this distributed IT intelligence model is going to happen to you one way or another. And either you're going to get there as a corporation or your competition is going to get there. And we'll go back to the corporate longevity slide and you'll be one, your company will be one going out of business. So you have to get there. You can leverage companies like DataArt and my company to help you get there. And the cost, it should be a cost advantage. You should be able to get competitive advantage. You should be able to do it in your current budget, so to speak, as you reallocate to value. So it's really a question of, you can't afford not to, in my view, move ahead in the new IT paradigm.
Yeah, and I would add that we talked at length about the ROI, but by definition, ROI is the return on investment. So what you invest in transformation, the returns, with a margin, with a profit, if it is advancing your organization in the market and helps you develop competitive advantage, so what you invest, you gain in productivity gains. And we are transitioning also to another question that I believe we have about the KPIs and how you measure performance of those transformations. It very much depends on what the transformation North Star is, very much business specific, right? So they'll be very unique to business situation. Like if you're trying to enter a new market alongside developing a new technology capability, let's say in Gen AI, right? Your transformation goals will be different from an organization trying to defend its domestic market, its core vertical, and at the same time trying to modernize some legacy while experiencing legislative changes and compliance burden increased, as we repeatedly see in healthcare these days. So there is, again, no single answer to how do you measure the performance of your transformation programs. Some general ones would be, again, impact to your EBITDA, ROI, internal rate of return, all of those things. But we can add your market share, obviously, your customer churn rate, your revenue from new products, your net promoter score. All those things serve a wide variety of transformations, but there are certainly more specific goals and targets for each business, and that's where it's kind of helpful to define those and cascade them down and associate with specific tasks at the very end of the food chain, so to say, right? So that every team member understands how he contributes to the program. So it's not like one number that CTO or CIO tracks and says, okay, well, I'm on track. It's the whole team needs to understand what's their input and what's their value that they're adding, and therefore they need to have associated KPI. So it's not one single answer. It will depend on the team and the level and the goal.
Yeah, I agree with you, Raama. It's always hard to say how much does it cost without knowing like full context, right? So final question, because we almost used all our time. What caused any of your transformation projects to fail? Can you give one major factor?
Yeah, for me, it's all about executive sponsorship. So you have to have alignment of the board and your C-suite, your executive leadership team around this transformation. That is the key success criteria. If you have that, you have a shot. If you don't have that, you're destined to fail.
Yeah. Raama, do you agree?
That's certainly there for sure. It's a super loaded question, right? So I'm kind of require systematic answer, which would take a bit of time to unpack. Let's see what I can add in the remaining 1 minute. So completely agree, executive buy-in, one of those. I'll refer back to the backcasting, right? So if backcasting is not employed during the planning and the North Star is not cascaded down to ambitious targets every step of the way, and instead there is a forecasting, we more often than not see those projects do not, materialize in significant improvements. They might certainly consume cost, but the ROI of these projects, when you have incremental progression, incremental improvements, is certainly not going to be impactful. Leverage of technologies properly. So Gen AI is both a big hype, but also a big enabler right now. Carefully unpacking the benefits that Gen AI, Agentic AI, intelligent automation bring in the already complex ecosystem of an enterprise, and planning that alongside existing kind of keep the lights on type of projects. When you balance offense and defense, that is another reason where we see if this is not carefully integrated into the fabric of IT transformation program, then usually either they fail midway, or again, the resulting outcome is not necessarily what investors were hoping to achieve or executive sponsors were looking to achieve. So these are some of the things that come to mind.
Okay, so we have a couple more questions, but we will try to answer somehow offline because we really have to finish our session now. So I would like to thank you, our experts, and I would like to thank you, our audience. I think this topic was relevant and interesting, and we would be glad to support you at any stage of your transformation, even if it's just, early stage thinking or those conversations about conversations, not real actions yet. We know how to do this. We've done that before many times, and we would be happy to help you. Thanks for watching once again, and let's go and do magic.
Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.